We are tonight's entertainment.
You can't handle the truth.
The fire rises.
Pizza time.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So it begins.
You know how much I sacrifice?
You think that's air you're breathing?
Groovy.
I don't have friends. I got family.
We are Sex People! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Craft Services.
Hey, Trent.
Hey, Parth.
How's it going?
Pretty good. What about you? You're looking well.
Thank you. We had a nice little chat just now.
We did. You know, off the air, on the air. What's the difference?
I feel like sometimes we are a little bit in too much of a rush to have like a solid pre-show show.
You
for each
gotta
other.
get those jitters out, you know?
Yeah. Just gotta get those jitters out. But I think that it's always nice when we've got some. Trent. It's far past this by the time the listener is listening to this, but happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, God. I mean, that's the time we are recording.
Yes.
But all of those lovebirds and you single, lonely people, whether or not whatever your status was on Wednesday, it's probably the same now. Unless you had a really exciting Valentine's Day.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. But happy holidays. This is really the dry season for holidays. You want me to get excited about St. Patrick's Day, Parth?
It's a fun day.
Not
Fun day.
anytime soon.
At a friend of the show, Sophia Alexis's house, like college house last year, we would throw parties for like random holidays. So there was a party for St. Patrick's Day. There's a party for Valentine's Day. There was a party for, take your child to work day.
In high school, we had a party once, and then you know how you can look at like the international holidays calendar, and like every day is like
some holiday,
National Hot Dog Day or whatever. It was International Braille Day, so on all the posters, we put the posters in Braille.
Oh, that's kind of fun.
But like it was printed out, so like anyone who's actually blind wouldn't be able to.
It would actually not be very helpful to anybody.
They wouldn't be able to come to the event, unfortunately.
Well, that seems helpful. Trent, what have you been eating most recently?
I feared you'd ask me this. And
that thing we do every episode.
And my backdoor solution is that I haven't eaten anything, but I was taking a shower, and so I think may have told anecdote.
Trent, you're putting a crazy image in my mind.
Yep. I was in the shower, fully clothed, and then this happens. And then I'm like, kind of thirsty, so I'm trying to sip some of the water. And then I guess I opened my mouth too wide, and then it projectiles and hits my uvula. And I have done this before and actually thrown up in the shower, but luckily this morning I didn't, and was just like
a cat.
But beware of that part. The direct stream. 1 second you're having a refreshing beverage, and the next you're throwing up in the shower.
Yeah.
What about you?
This morning I had a classic Eggo waffle situation, but what might be more interesting is not what I've had, but what I'm going to have.
This has never been a thing before.
Yeah, seriously. I am unfortunately going to have to work this Valentine's Day from 5 to 10, and so that sort of negates any sort of Valentine's Day dinner plan Sophia and I could have.
That narrows it down. Those are the prime Valentine's hours, I hear.
But about half an hour to 40 minutes, Sophia and I are going to go out to an all-you-can-eat sushi place.
Oh, Parth, I think you may have accidentally sidestepped into a beautiful scheduling thing where Valentine's lunch is like an underappreciated, jam, because it's probably not going to be crowded at all.
That's how I feel. And I'm very grateful that Sophia Alexis is not someone that particularly is like upset about the fact that we can't do dinner together. But
what's sushi at 2 p.m. versus sushi at 6 p.m.,
Yeah, seriously.
Just a couple people eating fish.
Just a couple of Joes eating some raw fish.
Oh my god. Well, Parth, where does a couple of Joes talking about some movies?
Trent, I've got just the podcast for you.
What is it?
Trent, you're on it. It's Craft Services, and we're cueing the intro.
and it's chocolate, and it's chocolate, and it's chocolate, 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 and it's chocolate. That's basically what that whole and a hand on the chocolate, and a hand on the chocolate.
You remember more of this song than than someone here who does actually like Wonka.
Well, I remember how the music, but I just put in chocolate for every word.
Okay, fair enough.
Give yourself some Wonka chocolate. That's what he fucking sounds like. My mom is like, Timothée Chalamet is not a triple threat. He's a single threat. No singing, no dancing.
Wow. Crushing.
She's not, yeah, crushing stuff.
Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film and hopefully have a crew member of that film to talk with us about their experience working on. Trent, I forgot the last word.
The picture. And you also forgot the guest, who is obviously editor Michael Andrews, who edited such films as Shrek 2, Shrek the Third, Megamind, and of course our film for today, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which is probably one of the hardest movies you can be tasked with editing. Am I right, Parth?
Yeah, no, 100% correct, Trent. Which is new for you. But
cool.
I'm sorry, I had to get a little dig in there somehow. No, but Trent, you are correct. Michael Andrews, a wonderful, wonderful editor that worked on a wonderful, wonderful movie. One of my favorites of the year last year, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Kind of, in this first part, I say that it breaks my mind having to think of how many layers upon layers of editing there must have been. And I have to say, I've watched the movie several times. I've now interviewed the movie's editor, and it is no less mind-breaking.
Well, Parth, I don't mean to, like, be this guy, but, like, this interview's, like, pretty great. So, like, I think we should just, like, cut to the chase, you know? Like, I think through the magic of editing, but we Trent, should take some of the editing lessons we may have learned over the next half hour and instill them in these very moments.
Cue the interview. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our interview with Michael Andrews. He's the editor behind such films as Shrek 2, Shrek the Third, Megamind, and our film for today, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, it's great to be here.
So, just to start off, what would you say your relationship with film was at a young age?
I was always attracted to film. I was always, there were two things that interested me early on. I thought maybe I would either be a cartoonist or a filmmaker, and I strangely didn't put two and two together and turned it into animation until much later in life. But like when I was 15, I had a cartoon in a local paper, and I thought I thought I'd made it at 15, and I managed to anger the mayor and the police force because I made fun of our town and all the crazy things that happened in my hometown. So I veered out of that quickly. But at the same time, I was making a lot of Super 8 movies back then. All my school projects I turned into Super 8 stop motion again, going to animation again prematurely, where I didn't even realize I'd end up in that career. I used G.I. Joes and Barbie dolls and then made stop motion. I made a stop motion Titanic for my history class as a junior in my bathtub, which my mother still talks about. I was always messing around, and it was always like for fun, and I was always trying to make comedies too at the time. So I was always very attracted to it. And then I realized I was always watching every movie I could possibly watch. And back then in my day, you had to like kind of book it around what came on television if you weren't going to see something in the theater. So, every week I would look at the TV guide and map out all the movies that I wanted to watch that week. And I was always staying up late and watching movies. And there was a thing called the 3:30 movie that was on in the afternoon. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and I'd come home from school and I'd watch that. And it was a interesting program because they managed to take a movie of whatever length and fit it into 90 minutes. So they would actually, with commercials, that means you get about a 45-minute movie in the end, or a 60-minute movie at the most. And they would literally just butcher the movies. So it was an interesting introduction to editing to see how movies would be butchered for time's sake. Yeah.
And then obviously through making all those films in high school, you are editing, but when did you sort of realize like I want to or I am an editor or like
it's funny. It took me a little while to realize it because I started working like the first Titanic movie I shot straight through the camera. I didn't even realize I could edit it. I didn't take that extra step, and then I started editing after that. But once I went through film school and I got out, I was doing work as a PA in productions in Chicago, and I was I was sort of warned against editing. Like people always told me, you don't want to work, you don't want to be an editor. You don't want, you're stuck in a room all day with somebody breathing over your shoulder. You don't want that. And the only problem was everything I created, the thing that people would comment on the most was the editing. And so I was kind of torn because it's like, well, everybody keeps telling me it's terrible. So my film teachers, commented on my editing in particular, and I just sort of, kind of rolled with that. And when I moved to Los Angeles, I got work with two people that I knew back from when I was in college. Actually, one was my film teacher, and she was also the one that was telling me that my editing was, probably my best aspect of my films I made. And I was able to work with them, and they were doing music videos at the time. They were doing animated music videos. Their names are Mike Patterson and Candace Reckinger, and they now teach at USC here. And I just got back together with them and went and spoke to their class just the other day. So Mike is the guy who, I don't know if this might be way before your time, but there was a video called by a band called Aha, and he was the one that actually drew it. It's a rotoscoped video, and it was very, groundbreaking for the time. And
Take on Me.
So they were doing, there you go, and they were doing music videos for Paula Abdul, and there was hybrid animation used where she was dancing with this cat. And so I was sort of, brought into the world of animation through them. And from there, I ended up just crossing the street when when the studio decided not to make any more music videos because they realized animation is very expensive and it takes too long. They bailed out of it, but across the street was a little studio called Spumco that was making a show called The Ren and Stimpy Show. And I happened to, my producer told me to go see if they wanted to buy our computer equipment that we were using. And I went over there and they said, well, do you know how to use it? And I said, yes. And so they hired me. And so I started doing their story reels for their shows. And so that's how I kind of got really into editing through that. And the moment that, to answer your question though, the moment that I realized, well, this is probably what I should be doing is, they used to do these like sheet timings for, back in the day on TV, they would storyboard it and they would put timings on the storyboard and basically send it to Korea where it would be animated, and they would look at it and they would animate this and go, okay, this is on for a half a second. And so that when I was doing the story reels, I was doing it according to those timings that the directors would give me. And then one time the director didn't have time to do it, and I just took a whack at editing the show myself, and he looked at it and said, well, you're doing this from now on. I'm not going to, why are we doing this? So I just kept, rolling from there, and I rolled into several other TV shows. I went to HBO. I worked on a show based on the comic book Spawn that HBO was doing. So it was cool because I was doing like kind of edgy, almost adult stuff. Instead of like, princessy Disney stuff, I was taking a much different route, and I think it laid a lot of groundwork for what I'm still doing today.
So I guess moving forward to today, if you could talk about how you got involved with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, because it seems like kind of a dream gig for a lot of people.
It definitely is. And I was working on a movie at Paramount during COVID. I was finishing a movie that was the third in the SpongeBob series of movies, and as that one came to a close, I didn't really have anything to roll on to, and I was helping out on another movie that Paramount was doing. I can't say I was, that enthused about the story and that movie in particular. So I got a call from Sony because Christina Steinberg was the producer of both Spider-Verse movies, and I'd worked with her back at DreamWorks when I was there. I was there for 20 years. So she called me and said, hey, our editor who had started the show had left the show. They'd already been working on the movie for about a year. And she said, do you want to come over? And I said, give me the weekend. I'll think about it. Because I knew it was a hard movie. The first one was a very hard movie to make. And I was kind of excited about it, but I just wanted to make sure. And I watched the first movie again, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember why I loved that movie and how brilliant it was. And I also watched Phil Lord and Chris Miller's both of their Jump Street movies.
Sure.
And they're hysterically funny. And I decided immediately I wanted to work with these guys, and I wanted to, see if I could cut one of their movies and see how they do it, because I feel like they have a special touch of making things feel very fresh and innovative. And I wanted to challenge myself to see if I could do that, and also just kind of go along for the ride.
Is there any sort of mantra or whatever for how editing an animated movie is different than animating a live action movie?
Yeah. That's the most common question I get.
Oh.
and for some weird reason, I always struggle to answer it. But the simplest way to answer it is, when you think of live action, all production follows 3 steps, right? Pre-production, production, post-production. Generally in the world of live action, they fall into the post-production category. In animation, we fall into the pre-production category, we fall into the production category, and we fall into the post-production category. And the post-production category is actually the smallest part of our job. The pre-production part of it is the biggest part of our job, because that's when we're building the story. So the biggest difference is we're on from the beginning, and we're deep in the trenches of story. So we're basically helping, write the movie, because we basically recreate it several times and screen it and see how that feels, and then we'll go back and we'll hack it up and rewrite and reboard, and they have to do it in the cheap way with storyboards, so it's all people drawing just to do it quick and inexpensively, and because once you hit the starting line of production, it starts to get much more expensive in animation, and so they want to avoid going into deep cost overruns by doing as much of the story work up front as possible. And then the challenge becomes, as you approach that starting line of production, you're like, oh, well, this isn't quite ready to go in yet. I don't know, but we got to send it anyway. And then it goes. And then you have to kind of keep massaging it all the way through. It's not like, I was referencing TV and sending it off to, a country like Korea to have it done back in the day. That's sort of like the mindset of like how a studio would like things to work, where you just sort of like do this part, you send it to the next department, you send it to the next. It never works that way with film, and it shouldn't, because if you want to make a great film, you got to keep working it until the bitter end. And that's what, Phil and Chris are big believers in. They never want to give up. They always want to push it, further until we have the best movie we, can possibly produce. So, we definitely have that major difference between us and live action. Otherwise, it's the same tools. It's the same, we're sitting in the same rooms with the similar people, talking about the same things. So there's also a lot in common. And I also feel like with all the CG work that's going on, even, in live action, I feel like their world is actually coming closer to our world, where they're starting earlier and earlier with previs and all of that. So, that's more similar to what we do.
Can you explain the pipeline or hierarchy of how footage gets handed off to you and vice versa, of how you hand footage off, just especially with this movie, with the amount of sort of layers to so many of the images? It kind of breaks my brain to try to reverse engineer that process. So if you could illuminate us on it.
It breaks my brain as it happens right before my eyes.
Very good.
Well, we're, editorial's often referred to as the hub of production, and, story comes in and production goes out. But at the same time, like I was saying, the studio would prefer it to be that linear, but it's not. It's, cyclical, where you're constantly coming back to us with each department. So in the beginning of this story, we get a bunch of storyboards. We record a bunch of scratch dialogue with we'll grab anyone. My assistants will perform as the actors, and we'll just sort of make these fake shows of what it can feel like. And we work that to death. And once it reaches a point where we think, okay, this scene's actually coming along pretty well, we can put this in production, the next department is called layout, which is really kind of an old term from the 2D days, but it's really meant to be like where everything gets set up in camera, and what characters and sets and props and angles and what the shots are actually going to look like. So that's where it becomes closer to live action for me. So layout starts sending in all of their footage, which is their representation of either the boards or hopefully something better than what the boards were able to give us. And that's where we go back and forth with them a few times, like, how can we give us close-ups here? I'll do a lot of little Avid tricks where I'll just blow stuff up, or do kludgy little things with characters, putting things in the foreground out of focus, or whatever I can do to give them a suggestion of what we were hoping for, and then kick it back to them. And they try to fix the shots. There's also a layer that every animated movie I've ever been on tries to do, called previs, which is one step sort of ahead of layout, where they try to give us more options, more coverage, more footage to work from. It's all great and fun when it happens, but it rarely happens because the way these shows move, they're runaway trains, and, time's ticking, and they run out of time, and they go, no, let's just take it straight to layout. And who knows? I mean, there's new tools now, like the Unreal Engine, which might open up, new opportunities to create more footage more quickly. So we're hoping that phase of production will change. And then after that, it's, that's the bulk of my work, prepping, the shots and the scenes to get them into production. Once it's in production, beyond that, it's going to animation. The animators take each shot. Animators work on basically one shot at a time, and that stuff gets sent back to me as they're working through it in dailies, and I'm checking it in the cut to make sure everything's going smoothly, and I'm able to, give my 2 cents as to if something's kind of going off the rails or not what was intended, or something, we can give them a little steerage to get them back. And then from there, I can't provide visuals obviously on a podcast, but that animation doesn't have all the lighting and all the textures quite yet. So the next department is lighting and effects after that. And they come back with, basically what is close to final shots. And I see various iterations of those. But it all keeps coming back through edit, and we keep going back and looking at the scenes, and we'll see we'll even discover things in lighting, oh shoot, we have a problem because we're not really able to see what we need to see for the point of the scene, or so things do arise even that late in the game. But so we're everything's coming back through us. We're monitoring every stage of every department, and it just never stops, and it's just spinning a lot of plates at the same time to keep it all moving forward.
I'm sure, like, different people are working on different scenes at all times, and then they're sending those for you to start piecing together. Where do you start? Do you start at the beginning, or are they just sending you stuff randomly and you'll start at wherever, whatever they can give you? Does it not matter? Is there a system?
Is there a system? That's always the question. It depends on what department you're talking about. Usually we proceed forward, like in story, they'll say, like there's usually a script. Sometimes story artists don't even work from a script. But Phil and Chris are writers. They have a writer. They like everything on the page first, but it's only a starting point, like we definitely rewrite throughout the entire process. They allow the actors to do a lot of improv and rewriting on the fly, even as we record. But we steer things like as much as we can. Layout, we'll get the first sequence that goes into production will go to layout, and that's usually the one where we've had at least 2 or 3 screenings. And by screening, I mean we've put up the entire movie in storyboard form with full sound, sometimes with some production dialogue, sometimes with scratch dialogue, full-on sound effects, full-on temp music, make it as rich as possible. We go down into the theater here at Sony, and we all sit in the theater and pretend like we're watching a movie. And then everybody, meets afterwards and complains about all the things they hate, and then we have to try to address them. But we're usually able to identify, okay, that scene's in a decent place. That can go into production first. 9 times out of 10, we're wrong, and it ends up being one that we rework to death, even deep in. Like we'll discover, oh wait, the scene that comes before that is now kind of reworked, and that kind of changes that scene. So we got to go back and rework that. So it's sort of like this funneling process where you hope you're passing on the best of to the next department. Animation, like layout, works as a sequence. They like a 3-minute chunk or so. They'll give us all those shots at one time, so that we're working on that entire sequence. Then animation just works in bits and pieces, and then it becomes like kind of piecemeal from that point on. But it's usually like whatever section, whatever beat is we feel the strongest about moves forward down the line.
Is there like significant restructuring? I mean, it seems like obviously there was significant restructuring that happened in the movie, but based on like the final product we see today, that it was so completely different in this one way, that you were, and it did change that, like specifically story-wise with this movie, that you could talk about?
I'd say the initial 6 months to a year, which was actually mostly before my time, a lot of that stuff got thrown out. There was a general structure that's very similar. There was an additional villain. Spot was not the only villain. He was actually like the better of the nicer of the 2 villains. So there were definitely different things going on back then. But I would say like from the first script I read, it was generally there, like the bones were there, and it was always like, heading in this direction, and we knew, what Miles' journey needed to be, and we always steered towards that. We reworked everything, as much as we possibly could throughout. So I mean, if you look at like the beginning scenes from like when I first got on to the final product, you go, okay, that's like sort of what it is, but definitely not as good. And thank God they worked it. But yeah, you'd definitely you'd see all the DNA. It's all there, because this was the story that was going to be told. One of the big changes we had to make was cutting the movie in two.
Was that not the case when you signed on to the movie?
No, when I signed on, we were doing one movie, and it was big.
Clearly.
Like there was a version of the first act when I first arrived, and then and that's all they showed me. And then I took the job, and I came on, and I started looking at the rest of the movie, and I was like, oh dear God, how are we going to do this? This is never going to fit. So as we built that out, we discovered we had about a 3-hour movie on our hands, and the third act was kind of carded in a lot of places, where we'd even just put text on the screen and say, this is what happens here, because we didn't have the materials yet. So that's even we're sort of we're underestimating the length of time, and it was still about 3 hours. So we reached a point where it was, something had to break. There was just no way we could pull off all the story that we were trying to tell in this one movie. And then it became like, well, where do we split it? And that's when we, decided it was a good scene to get to, Aaron and the other Miles character, and let them face off, and then leave that as a cliffhanger. Which at one point we even ended the movie that way, with them facing off, and we had, let's say, a fairly negative reaction from a preview audience that wasn't happy with that result. So we added a brighter ending to it, let's say, with the thought of Gwen coming to rescue and gather the team, and Miles actually, showing that he's about to do something. And, that became something that I was so happy we did, because we turned it over to Daniel Pemberton, and he did such an incredible score for that ending that it I feel like it saved the film right then and there.
Wow, what an interview.
Wow. What an interview. But I'm left feeling a little unfulfilled. It felt like it just ended halfway through. But it's good, because I need a break for 6-7 days, and then I would be ready to hear the next part.
As much as I love Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, it's a part 1 of 2. And they're going to make us wait for maybe a year or something like that. They're making us wait a long time, but we've split this interview into 2 parts, and fellas, you only have to wait 1 week.
But Parth, the best things in life are worth waiting for.
That's right, guys. Part 2 of our interview with editor Michael Andrews comes out next week. We talk about some more specific scenes. He talks about his favorite movie of the year. And Trent, I don't know if I told you this, but he, right after the interview, he emailed me and gave the last great movie he watched. He gave an addendum. Well, Trent, that's a next week thing.
Yeah, we'll worry about that then. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. Just so excited. So excited.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
No
Well,
one like that.
if you guys are excited, then I don't know. Then you
Trent,
can go ahead.
You're the transition king. That was
and then
you were the transition peasant just then.
And take that excitement. Take that excitement. And you're going to want to go ahead and follow us on Instagram or Twitter. Those are our 2 social medias. And then after you do that, you're going to want to go ahead and listen to us wherever it's most convenient for you, which would be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher.
You're like a transition steed, I guess, at this point.
I'm like a transition jester. I'm just here to amuse the king.
You're the Joker, baby.
I wonder who the king is.
Well, guys, that was a great episode. I'm glad we all went through this together.
Yep.
I feel like we're all stronger because of it. And I can't wait to see you guys next week.
I can't wait to see these kids grow up, Parth. These
Yeah.
listeners, it's just like you start a film podcast, you watch Star Wars The Force Awakens a few years go by,
God.
and got hair in places
Trent.
you didn't know about.
Well, I mean, that may have happened to some of us.
Yeah, Parth, I had someone, a film student, but someone not in our immediate circle, come up to me and said, "Hey, I had a question for you.
Oh,
it's about the podcast." And I was like, "Okay." And they said, "I listened to both parts of the Iron Claw interview, and now where's the discussion?"
Wow.
And I was
That's so
thanks.
surprising.
I was like, "Thank you for that." I was like, "You're making it worthwhile." Disappointed by the absence of an Iron Claw discussion. Now that's a first.
Yeah, I guess if you're a longtime listener but not a consistent listener and are used to our usual rhythm
Breakdown
of interview followed by discussion, we are nixing discussions for the foreseeable future. We just think that the interviews are kind of what people are here for. But who knows? Apparently someone from Rutgers, Mason Gross School of the Arts, film department,
digital
who I'm not
filmmaking
really
major.
acquainted with. That's not really our friend.
You know who they are, but they're in the outer circle. But maybe they're listening to this because apparently they love the Iron Claw so much.
Yeah, seriously. Well, I mean, I have no idea who this person is, so I could know. But Charm, why don't you just tell me and I'll bleep it out?
I was just gonna tell you off the air, but it's
Oh wow, that's surprising.
fine.
But yeah, we've been nixing discussions. But no one has seemed to care. Least of all the listenership, and I can tell because our listenership has not gone down.
Cool.
Not that there's much room. But Trent, it'll be 4 years this year.
Wow. That's my thoughts on that.
See you next week.